foreign, predatory, parasitic corporations are replacing our natural environment with an industrial landscape of wind turbines. One Nation will stand against sending children down a path of drug dependency and body mutilation to appease the gender cult. Leave our kids alone. The Trusted Digital Identity Bill is a global surveillance and control mechanism that profit-hungry corporations and power-mad politicians drafted and crafted. One Nation opposes this inhuman, dystopian future that the United Nations promotes as the Great Reset, and we condemn this Parliament for signing on to it. I called for Australia to reject the World Economic Forum's Great Reset and instead mount a great resist. Just like the koalas being euthanized to make way for wind turbines, or damaged solar panels leaking toxic heavy metals into waterways, the United Nations net zero plan again involves killing the environment to save it. I've been speaking about the fear, the oppression and the inhuman cruelty of our COVID response since July 2020. I promised to hound down those responsible, and I will continue relentlessly to keep that promise. You're about to be live with me, Senator Malcolm Roberts. Well, g'day. It's Senator Malcolm Roberts in Brisbane with the weekly wrap-up from the only opposition party in Australia, the only party serving the Australian people. And no, it's not Saturday tomorrow. Today is not Friday. I've just got to do the live on Wednesday for a change because my Friday is completely committed and I've got other things that I must do. And please accept my regrets for not doing live streams the last few weeks. I've been traveling and also in the Senate and Senate inquiry. So I've been to Perth and Adelaide and where else? Melbourne and Sydney. So with inquiries and with speaking engagements. I want to start with something a bit different. And I'll tell you why later. But I'll tell you why straight away. We're going to start with the Heroes Gallery, Citizens Active in Democracy. And the first man is Stephen Nowakowski. But the reason I want to start with the Heroes Gallery is there are so many things to celebrate in our country. As an executive general manager and as a senator in our Senate office, I used to start meetings with, and I still do start meetings with something to appreciate. We just go around the table and ask everyone to mention something they appreciate. At first, people feel awkward. That's how rare we think about what we appreciate in this country and in business. But after a while, people get the hang of it and it becomes easy. And once Christ taught us that gratitude is extremely important, and appreciation is another word for gratitude in many, many ways. So the other thing I want to do with this Heroes Gallery is make it a regular feature so that we can publicize people who are doing things for Australia. And I want to highlight especially people, not only, but especially people who are doing things as active citizens. Citizens active in democracy. I've said many, many times that a passive democracy where people just accept things falls into apathy, which falls into tyranny, which falls into anarchy and complete loss of values in life. But when citizens are active, and a good democracy, people have to be active, not just voting with an informed way after informing themselves about their candidates, their characters, and the candidate's character and the candidate's values and the policies, but also holding people accountable, MPs accountable between elections. That's really important. And this man, Stephen Nowakowski, is from God's country, North Queensland, and he's fighting for the natural environment, and he's also fighting for the human environment. Very, very important to understand that. Stephen was a Greens until he woke up. He was a Greens candidate to become a member of Parliament until he woke up. And why did he wake up? Well, he decided he better go and check the consequences of solar and wind. And he comes from one of the most beautiful places in the planet, and that's North Queensland, the Atherton Tableland. And he bushwalks regularly. He's just grown up there. He just loves the joint, and there's plenty to love in North Queensland, especially the Atherton Tableland and the rainforest. But he's a cartographer, which means he makes maps. He also now earns a living making calendars, making diaries, making pictures, and he's a first-class photographer. And he's also a very effective communicator. But what happened was he went up into the places where they're building solar panels, extensive industrial scale solar panels and wind turbines. And he was horrified They're destroying the environment in the name of supposedly saving the planet. And he's a very passionate conservationist and a genuine conservationist, a real environmentalist. He's not a Greens type green. He's a real greenie, the old greenies like the 1960s and 50s who believe in protecting the planet. But also he believes in humans. And he could see once he became aware that we were destroying the natural environment with Greens and Labor policies and Liberal policies to put in solar panels and wind turbines on a massive scale. He then started doing his research, because what I love about Stephen, amongst many things, is that he believes in getting the data. He's a real stickler for getting accurate data and then reading through the data and getting what it means. And he realized that was very, very detrimental to the human society, to the human community, the human environment. It's destroying regional areas where they're installing these industrial scale wind turbines and solar panels. And he's just realized how bad this energy system is. It dramatically raises the cost of energy, which dramatically decreases standards of living and increases the cost of living. Everything's a lose-lose with solar and wind on massive scale. So Stephen Nowakowski, he had the courage to check his own beliefs. When he found they were wrong, he informed himself and changed his opinion. And now he's fighting for North Queensland, fighting for the natural environment all over Australia. He has done the best map of solar and wind installations around the country proposed. And it is frightening. They're going to cover the whole country in this rubbish. And they're taking the wind at the windiest places, naturally, which happens to be where birds migrate from way up in the northern hemisphere, right down as far away as Alaska, right down here into the southern hemisphere, along our eastern seaboard, down to Tassie. And the habitats are being destroyed, koalas being killed, clubbed. And Stephen is horrified at this. And he saddled up. He doesn't make a hell of a lot of money. He makes no money out of this. It costs him a lot of money, so he doesn't make much money out of his income, because he's out of his regular job, regular business, because he's had to almost sideline that, because he wants to fight for the people, fight for the animals, fight for the biodiversity of this country. And he's doing a marvelous job. And he is probably the government's enemy number one. And he's my hero number one. We have been bashing away at this climate fraud, this climate crap, this climate nonsense, this climate fake alarm for, in my case, since 2007. That's 18 years. Stephen has come along, and in a couple of years, by making it all visual, dramatically started to change the way people are thinking. And the Labor Party and the Greens Party, and particular Minister Bowen, Chris Bowen, are really tearing into him. They're trying to discredit him. They're trying to smear him. They're trying to bring him down. They are terrified of Stephen Nowakowski. And another person they're terrified about is a gorgeous woman from Kilkivan near Gympie, Katie McCallum. She's an ex-cop who's done a lot of really good work in Aboriginal communities and in white communities all over the state. She's one of those people that when you pick up the phone and it's Katie, you can't help it. See, look, I'm smiling already. You can't help but smile, because she's just got that way about her. She's a real dynamo. Don't get in her way. She's a real dynamo. She understands the law from being a policeman, and she's got conviction, and she's not been convicted. She's got conviction. She's got a really strong sense of data and likes data. And she's a regional girl, grew up in the regions. And she's fighting for regional Australia that is carrying the whole of this country on its back when it comes to solar and wind, industrial scale solar and wind. So I I'd be pretty forthright in saying that Katie is the government's enemy number two. They're trying to destroy her. She is just a fantastic human being. Both these people love humans, love the natural environment, love the regions, and they want to protect all of Australia for all Australians. The next one I want to go into on Heroes Corner, or Heroes Wall, a Heroes Gallery, is Scott Challen. I've just had about 2 hours with Scott, an hour and a half with Scott Challen, because he called me up and said, why did you support the telecommunications bill? He's doing his job as a citizen. He's holding me accountable as his representative in Parliament. So we've explained it to him. We've explained the intricacies of it and why we had to do that. Well, we didn't have to, but the bill enhances freedoms for people. It enables people who've been recorded by authorities and found evidence that'll get them off a charge because it proves they're guilty, that they must get access to that evidence. And there are other benefits as well. It protects investigators like police who are investigating child pedophilia, child pornography, child abuse. So that's very, very important to understand. But I love being held accountable because it forces me to think more deeply about why I'm doing things. And Scott, full marks to you, mate. Very good. And by the way, I've reposted some of his videos because he is full bottle on mass migration, mass immigration, and on the housing crisis. He's a builder. He's down to earth. He's served in the Royal Australian Air Force for 6 years. And he's one of these people, very, very impressive from the Defence Forces. They really do conduct themselves very strongly, very vigorously, but very, very respectfully. It's a joy to deal with people who are in the armed forces or who were in the armed forces. He's very significant as well for another reason. Scott is one of the Brisbane organisers of the March for Australia. Nothing to do with the southern marches in New South Wales and Sydney and Melbourne. He has kept this very strong up here. And it's not just Scott. He's got a group of people, a team around him who are just fantastic individuals, believe in the country. And we just had a fantastic discussion today. So March for Australia, lead organizer, leader of the team in Queensland, and makes fantastic social media posts. Well worth watching. We'll continue to share them. Another person I've got to keep confidential here. Let's just call him PB. He's got an Order of Australia medal for research services to Australia. What he's been doing is been helping me on climate research, and just amazing man. He's truly gifted. And I just want to highlight him at the moment because he's been working with Chat GTP. He's actually been chatting to Chat GTP, and I think he's probably got it all over Chat GTP. He's so intelligent, so practical. But he uses Chat GPT in super rational mode. Now, normally, most people use Chat GPT in just ask it to answer questions. And it goes out, scurries around the internet and picks up all kinds of crap and filters it and averages it, and that's it. In other words, it goes and gets a whole lot of crap. There's some good stuff in it, and then it dishes out the average, which is crap. Peter uses super rational mode of GPT, I'm sorry. And he gets remarkable achievements with it, and I'll show you more of them in the future. Okay, next one, please, Ryan. Martine Shepherd, what a dynamo. She's my height, which makes it pretty normal, but she's leader of a team in Western Australia that's grown up to protect the coastline, the marine environment from offshore wind turbines, which are hideously destructive. And by the way, just a little line here. Warren Buffett is the world's most astute and most successful investor ever. No one can match what he's done. Very, very astute. He said just a few years ago, wind turbines are a lousy investment. Subsidized wind turbines, wonderful investment. And that's the key when you understand that. They're not effective unless they're subsidized, which means they're not effective. They're not productive. They are parasitic. They take subsidies and they destroy the host, which is the human environment. And Martine Shepherd has got an amazing group around her. She brought out Megan Clapp from the United States, and Megan was a wonderful speaker as well. But thank you for the privilege of speaking with you and with your audience in Perth recently. Martine, and really well organized, very, very effective. And I think you'll see more from this young lady. Carlos Caremba and the Nitschke family. Carlos Caremba is our lead upper house candidate in South Australia. He's the leader of the party, One Nation Party in South Australia, gearing up for the state election in March coming up, which is only 4 months away. Wonderful bloke, very practical, very strong, very good speaker, ties things politically together very well. And the Nitschke family, thank you so much for donating or lending your facilities to us for a meeting of the South Australian One Nation meeting. Thank you very much. Here are the issues that that I think are the biggest issues in Australia right now: mass immigration, housing, energy, rampant bureaucracy, including the encroachment, the stealing, the destroying of freedom of speech. All of these areas, One Nation leads the way. Every single one of those areas, we are opposing mass immigration, and other parties are now starting to get onto it, which is what the political pressure we've raised is doing. Housing, we're the only party with a comprehensive housing policy. We're the only party with a comprehensive energy policy. We're the only party, listen to this, that opposes net zero. The only party that opposes net zero. You've heard a bit about the Liberals and the Nationals. They still support carbon dioxide limits. They still want to be part of the UN corrupt Paris Agreement, which is not an agreement. The other topic is governance that is completely collapsing in this country. Governance is shot to bits. It's based on lies, looking after vested interests, looking after mates, looking after corporate donors and large donors, looking after subsidies to parasitic billionaires behaving parasitically. Secondly, they're ceding sovereignty, and they're not basing things on data. This is a complete opposite of the way to run a country, way to run an economy, the way to enable an economy to work. Okay, so they're the 5 topics. Maybe that'll give you some food for thought for Q&A at the end. And I'm flying blind here without a clock, so let's have a look. Okay, let's get on to migration policy. The coalition is planning a big migration cut. They want to slash our intake at least 100,000. That's not big. I'll tell you what big is, because that would still mean hundreds of thousands of people coming here, and we're already overloaded. One Nation has a policy of negative net migration. 220,000 leave on average a year. That means we would allow only 130 skilled people who can go immediately to work to enter. That gives us a deficit, a net negative migration of 90,000. We need to get our population under control. It's out of control at the moment. We would deport, we're the only ones who are saying this, we would deport 100,000 people who are here illegally, remigrate them back to their where they came from, their latest residence, or where their home country is. Send them back, get rid of them. They're here illegally, they don't deserve to be here. We'd also reduce foreign students by about 100,000 as well, and work on getting it down further than that. We would deport non-compliant students who are basically on a Ponzi scheme, and some of them have got their families, and they're all taking up beds that Australians need. We've got 400,000 foreign students at the moment, and only beds for 100,000 in student accommodation. We need to get rid of the people who are here illegally. So the Liberals are talking about a cut. They're talking about targeting foreign students. Why are they talking about it? Because we've raised this in their face for the last 5 years. We've raised it and raised it and raised it. It became acknowledged as an election issue, but it was barely mentioned by the Liberal and Labor Party. They did mention they would have a cut, but that's all they said. They would think about it. Now they're talking about it, and they're talking about targeting foreign students. One Nation has been calling for this policy for years. One Nation policies are so good that this is another example where the One Nation has been effective even before taking government. So in 2015, there were 1,046,000 Australians at university and 363,000 foreign students, despite Australia's population growing 17% since then. Another 40,000 Australian students are at university today. That's just a 3.8% increase. Yet the number of foreign students has grown 82% to 599,000 students. 589,000 students. Sorry, my figures of 400,000 a minute ago were just about what it was. Now it's 589. So it's gone up about 60%. Each of these foreign students, as I said, needs a bed. There are only 100,000 student beds. Many of those are for Australian children coming in from the regional areas to study at university. It should be obvious we don't have the beds for this many students. It's bloody obvious. Of course it's obvious. They're driving up rents and are displacing Australian children from university. Foreign students can now bring family members with them to our country when they study. It's called Secondary Application Visa Subclass 500. That's another 80,000 people or so who never go home. More than 100,000 foreign students have finished study, and yet they're still here. Years later, with their families, student visas are a racket. It's a Ponzi scheme, a racket the Albanese government has lost control of. One Nation will get control of that. We will remigrate students who no longer are students. We will remigrate anyone who is not only finished their studies, but who's not studying. We know of surveys that show 50% of some universities' students, foreign students, are not working, are not studying. They're working. They flunked out. And it's just a Ponzi scheme. And then we also know the figures that $11 billion is sent back home to their families, because that's why these students, so-called students, are here to earn money. It's a Ponzi scheme. Send the money back out of the countries. Now, universities have lost their way. I've been to one of the top universities in the world, along with my wife. I've been to one of the top universities in Australia as well. So I'm not down on universities, but I don't think they're doing their job anymore. They depend on foreign students. That's been deliberately cultivated since John Howard's policy of making it easier for foreign students to come in. They've lowered the standards, lowered the language. There are some classes being conducted in Chinese. How do Australian kids understand Chinese? And then we've got the woke culture that is at universities. John Howard's government started the massive increase in foreign students. We need to go back to what is good for Australia. Immigration policy, student policy should look after, first of all, the people who are already here, look after Australians. So now we've got the chief executive of the Commonwealth Bank. Hold it there. Commonwealth Bank boss, this is from, I've forgotten which source this is from one of the media. Commonwealth Bank boss makes extraordinary. Can they see that, Ryan? Good, thank you. So everyone can see this on the screen. The Commonwealth Bank of Australia boss calls for a reduction in migration. Makes an extraordinary call. I don't know what's extraordinary about it. It's common sense. He makes an extraordinary call about Australia's immigration level in order to reduce house prices. This is the level he's suggesting, cutting 80,000. That's nonsense. It should be far, far higher. I guess what's extraordinary about it is that a bank executive is finally acknowledging that housing prices are skyrocketing because of mass immigration. That's it. And that's really hurting the young people from 18 to 45 in particular. Sky News featured it as well. Oh, and that's right. Pauline, they've got a headline from Sky News. Pauline Hanson, not surprised by polling showing One Nation preferred by voters to handle immigration. Of course we are. We've been on this full bottle ever since the party started. And my office in particular has been leading the way for the last 4 or 5 years, with Pauline very strongly in support, mind you. Hang on, go back, please, Ryan. Thank you. One Nation, this is another headline, sub-headline from Sky News. One Nation has overtaken both Labor and the Coalition as the party most trusted to handle Australia's immigration challenge, as Pauline Hanson's voters have had enough. They've had a gutful. Okay, mate, scroll. So I'm guessing you can see that picture there. Okay, so if you just focus on the picture, it's up, is it? One Nation, I think it's about 20. What percentage is that, Ryan? 27%. Sorry, I know that Liberals are about 19%. Labor is about 20%. Look at the Greens, 4%. The Greens are part of this. The problem with mass migration, because they have an open border policy. Let everyone in. Let everyone in, and look after the new arrivals better than we look after Australians. That's the Greens policy in a nutshell. So there's no one even close to One Nation in trust on immigration. Okay, Ryan. So the Greens on immigration, open borders, flood migration. It's not mass migration with the Greens, it's flood migration with the Greens. And rent prices, they want to fix rent prices by rent controls, not by cutting the number of immigrants coming in, by rent controls. Rent controls drive up rents all around the world. We know that for a fact. Every time, Argentina's just done it, remove rent controls, and the cost of rents has gone down and the housing availability has gone up. They want to stop logging in Australia. Where do we get our bloody timber from? They want to stop use of coal. Where do we get our steel from to make steel-framed houses? So we can't have, under the Greens policies, we can't have timber-framed homes. We can't have steel-framed homes. We have Pixies throwing rainbow dust at the bottom of the garden, fairies down the bottom of the garden. I don't know what they want, but think about this as well. Instead of logging and a proper managed logging in this country and managing our timber resource, which is a renewable resource, they want to import it from other countries where they don't have good regulations protecting timber and protecting the timber, the forests. And the Greens want to stop affordable energy, coal and hydro. They want to stop, and they won't allow nuclear. All the three cheapest sources of power, they nix. They just knock out. They want solar and wind, which is destroying the environment and raising electricity prices and causing inflation. Let's move on to another topic, one of my favorite topics. The E-Safety Commissar, Julie Inman-Grant. This is from one of the media. I can't remember which it is. E-Safety Commissar Julie Inman-Grant, who's an American, called to testify before U.S. Congress by Donald Trump ally over threat to Americans' free speech. Jim Jordan, I think, is the... anyway, Sky News has got a copy of a bombshell letter, as they say, from a U.S. House of Representatives committee chairman, Jim Jordan, I think his name is, member of the House of Representatives, and an ally of President Donald Trump, accusing E-Safety Commissar Julie Inman-Grant of being a zealot and a direct threat to the free speech of American citizens, and requesting she testifies before Congress within 2 weeks. She's a threat to free speech in this country. Julie Inman-Grant is the world sick of busybody bureaucrats censoring discussion? Yes, it is. Sick of foreign bureaucrats. She's a foreigner come into this country to set up an e-safety office. Some of the work that the e-safety office is doing is good work. It's protecting children, but some of it has gone way out of control, way out of bounds. Foreign bureaucrats are making a name for herself as a pawn for globalists. She's putting in place, she's playing on the global stage, developing a system with some other countries for global censorship. Julie Inman-Grant, the e-safety commissar, is set to be brought before the US Judiciary Committee to answer questions about Australia's Online Safety Act. Particularly, the United States wants to dissect Australia over claims it is one of the foreign censorship regimes violating America's free speech protection. Free speech is absolutely essential for human progress. A letter written from the chairman of the US House of Representatives Judiciary Committee said of Ms. Grant, I'm going to read this now. This is a quote from his letter. I think it's Jim Jordan. Is that the name, Ryan? Jim Jordan? As the primary, he says in his letter to Julie Inman-Grant, our e-safety commissar, as the primary enforcer of Australia's Office of Safety and noted zealot for global takedowns, you are uniquely positioned to provide information about. Excuse me, we're having trouble with. About the law's free speech. Sorry, I'll start again. As the primary enforcer of Australia's Online Safety Act and noted zealot for global takedowns, notice what he said there, noted zealot for global takedowns, you are uniquely positioned to provide information about the law's free speech implications, both in the US and abroad. Your expansive interpretation and enforcement of Australia's Online Safety Act, including your claim of extraterritorial jurisdiction to censor speech outside of Australia, directly threatens American speech. End of quote. Now, it takes some serious nerve to not only censor Australians and then interfere with American free speech. We know what the censorship landscape looks like in Australia, and the Americans don't want a bar of it, especially under Trump. We know how the censors treated the victims of government tyranny, big pharma experiments, and coordinated protection rackets run between mainstream media and the political class. Now, Julie Inman-Grant is being put ideologically side by side with Brazil and the European Union when it comes to attacking the speech of citizens. That's pretty serious stuff. Oh, and going from one charade to the next. Here we go to a real clown. Chris Bowen, who's been a rampant liar on energy and climate, and 500 Aussie delegates are going to jet to Brazil. They're in Brazil for Climate Talk Fest, and you're paying for it. I remember laughing back in 2010 or 11 Copenhagen Conference of Parties for the UN. Kevin Rudd was chastised and ridiculed for taking 104 people in his delegation to Copenhagen for the UN Conference of Parties. 104. One of them was a hairdresser. That is bloody ridiculous. Now we've got 500 people going. This is all about ego, ego, ego. And then they're talking about trying to get the next Conference of Parties next year in Adelaide. And they're fighting with Turkey over the rights to host it. And the event could in Brazil is costing about $2 billion. And that's what they think the event in Australia and Adelaide could cost up to $2 billion. And there's Minister Bowen, the climate clown, the energy clown, who said in the morning at Brazil at the UN conference that he wanted to fight for the Copenhagen 31. And he said, quote, "We're in it to win it." A few hours later, Anthony Albanese says, "Oh, maybe we'll let Turkey have it." The backup is Germany and the Pacific to host, which would make jets flying all over the world with these delegates. See what I mean? A few hours later, Albanese dumps Adelaide Conference of Parties from the UN, bid to make play for Pacific Summit instead. He wants to grandstand. This is all about grandstanding on the world stage, following some bullshit climate claim from the United Nations. And I'll be starting a series on that in the near future. But this is about ego. Here we go, the Conference of Parties conference. Australia versus Turkey for the next one, until Albanese pulled the rug out from under Chris Bowen. These people don't know what each other's doing in this. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. For reasons known only to the climate change and energy minister, Australia is locked in a battle to spend $1.5 billion of public money, flying billionaires and bureaucrats into the country next year to lecture us about how higher taxes will save the planet, so they can fly their jets around. No one knows who will host the Conference of Parties after the current Brazil conference. Anthony Albanese has said only a few hours ago that he would not block Turkey from hosting the 2026 UN Climate Conference. In the event Australia and Turkey fail to reach an agreement, it will be held in Germany. Germany does not want that for the same reason we don't want it. It is expensive and pointless and just a charade, and you pay for it. The taxpayers pay for it. We all pay for it. Like so many backroom deals at the UN, the Conference of Party conference is signed upon with a handshake, is agreed upon with a handshake. Albanese says he wants it because, well, here's the quote. "What we would seek to do is to ensure that the Pacific benefited from that through measures potentially like a leaders' meeting to be held in the Pacific." See, grandstand again. What absolute crap. What nonsense. The Pacific is egging Australia on to be host of the conference because it is likely that the Bowen-led climate charade, the climate administration, will organise a fresh round of handouts and gifts and agreements, bringing the total cost well above the $1.5 billion fee. And that's why it's now estimated at around $2 billion. But there's good news in this climate rubbish. The climate consensus is collapsing. And the attacks on Stephen Nowakowski, the attacks on Katie McCallum, the ridiculous goings-on in Brazil, they're all about acts of desperation. Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, recently said, just a few days ago, said the climate consensus is collapsing. But he'll continue with his net zero madness. But he's admitted that the consensus is collapsing. There was never any consensus because the fact is that only a few dopey Western countries are really going ahead with this. The Paris Agreement, China said, "Go to hell. We'll think about it in 2050." Made no formal commitments to cut. Same with India. Same with many Asian countries, many African countries, South American countries. The only people buying into this are dopes in the West, in some Western countries. So, and then we also heard Bill Gates, one of the major protagonists of climate fear, climate alarm, climate bullshit, just until recently, when he said that it's not as bad as expected. They're starting to wind it back. But that doesn't stop the Greens and the Labor Party colluding on their misinformation and disinformation inquiry. The witnesses, let's have a look. The first two witnesses out of 5 days of hearings, the first two witnesses were government, so we call them neutral. They didn't have much to say whether this is all about setting up for the misinformation and disinformation bill based upon climate misinformation and disinformation. So the next 14 witnesses were all in favor of misinformation and disinformation bill. That's where they came from. That's where they came from. They were selected by the Greens Labor Committee, which is run by the chair, who is Green Senator Peter Whish-Wilson, and Deputy Chair, Senator Michelle Ananda Raja. And they're setting this up. I have never seen such a poorly chaired committee. I've never seen such a biased committee. In Melbourne on the third day of hearings, every one of the witnesses was in favour of the misinformation disinformation bill. On the second day, I think 3-5 and 3, 4, 5 against, and three against the misinformation disinformation, 5 in favour of the misinformation and disinformation. So what's that? That's 16, 8, 5, and on the last day, the majority, I can't remember, let's say, just say 5 again. So that's 24, 34 in favour of the misinformation, disinformation bill, about 6 against. That's just figures going off memory. The order of magnitude is certainly correct. And then we've got Senator Ananda Raja contradicting Stephen Nowakowski. Stephen Nowakowski, in answer to a question, said that he has been threatened by people pushing solar and wind. He's been threatened with someone with a firearm. And then she actively came out later that day and contradicted it, and disparaging him, disregarding and discrediting them. They were out to get Stephen Nowakowski. That's my honest opinion. My conclusion is that they're out to get him. They're going after him, they're smearing him, they're tainting him. They said that they implied that he used artificial intelligence to develop rainforest reserves submission. They didn't. They used artificial intelligence to check the references, and they got one of the references wrong, and they are hanging everything on that. So this attack on Stephen Nowakowski, unwarranted attack on one of the most genuine people I've ever met, proves that he's on target, proves that he's successful and effective in communication because of the data he uses and the visual effects with his photography and his video. His integrity, as I said, he was a Greens candidate, and he awoke into reality. And then he didn't just sit idly by. He's now fighting it, and he now knows that solar and wind are hurting humans. Solar and wind generation are hurting humans. So that leads us to the Nationals and the Liberals. Their pretense to dump UN World Economic Forum net zero. This is a complete load of crap. Matt Canavan has tweeted that they've dumped net zero. The Nationals have not dumped net zero. They're still coming up with limits to cut human production of carbon dioxide. They still have the net zero limits. That's what net zero is about, the limits of carbon dioxide, basically. Same with the Paris Agreement. They haven't pulled out of the Paris Agreement. Now, look, Matt is highly intelligent. He's humorous. He's a bloody good guy, funny guy to be around. He's very personable. He's media savvy. But in his 2015 speech, I think it was December 2015, a Liberal pointed this out to me, and I've seen the speech. He advocated cutting human production of carbon dioxide, Now he's running around saying that he can be more effective in the National Party with abandoning net zero, when they didn't abandon limits on carbon dioxide. The Liberals similarly want to stay in the Paris Agreement. They both want to stay in the Paris Agreement. The Liberals have a pretense. They still want limits on carbon dioxide output. They still want to push this carbon dioxide rubbish, this lies. And by the way, Paris is not an agreement. Paris, I'll tell you the story. How much time we got? Copenhagen, there's a big song and dance, big fanfare with presidents and princes and prime ministers flying into Copenhagen at the end of their conference back in 2010, 11, whenever it was, to sign the agreement. There's no agreement because China said go to hell. India said go to hell. They're not signing anything. And so they were all embarrassed. So what they did at Paris, they changed. They flew in the presidents and the prime ministers and the princes at the start of the Paris meeting, the Paris conference in 2015. And they didn't sign anything. They all left. And then the failure to get agreement was very simply handled because they said, okay, whatever you want to commit to, that's your agreement. So China said, we're not going to think about anything until 2050. India said much the same. Other countries said similar kinds of things. And Australia said, we're going to destroy our economy. We're going to commit economic suicide, and we'll pass legislation to push it through the parliament. And that's the point. The UN and the World Economic Forum have no control over us. But at the moment our dopey bastards in the Liberal and Labor Party in Canberra pass some legislation, that's it. It's enshrined. So our agreement is to destroy our country, and China will sell us the means for helping us to destroy our country. But you know what? Labor's feeling the heat because I've never seen a government react to something the opposition has done in pretending to cut net zero and getting headlines cutting net zero when it hasn't. But think about this. Why are they doing it? Why is the National Party doing it? Why are the Liberals doing it? Why is Labor worried? Because one nation has been opposed to net zero from the start. We have exposed them. We've done it with data, with pictures, with maps from Stephen Nowakowski, with videos. We have exposed them, and they're feeling the heat. Particularly in the electorates, that's why the Nationals started, because they're feeling the heat from their own farmers, their own rural members, rural members of the party, and people are moving from the Nationals to One Nation membership. They're moving from the Liberals in droves to One Nation membership, and that's why they're doing it. So anybody who says that 2 senators from One Nation for the last 6 years, leading up to 2025, have been unsuccessful, you don't know what's actually happening. This is happening because One Nation has been relentless in pushing the data, pushing the facts, pushing the actual observations. And now with 4 senators, you watch us. And then the next election, watch us again, because people are waking up. What Pauline Hanson's been saying for 30 years on immigration, on our culture, is coming true. What Pauline Hanson's been saying for 30 years and so many things is just coming true. They laughed at you, Pauline. Now they're not laughing at you. Now they're with you. People in regional Australia are rising up. Thank you, Katie McCullum. Thank you, Stephen Nowakowski. You're the tip of the spear. Oh my goodness. How could I forget this fella? Mike Cannon Brooks. He admits in his annual report, his company, Atlassian, the company he leads, admits it has failed to meet its ambition for carbon emissions targets. No surprise. And show that picture again, please. Look at the jet. He's got his own private jet that he flies around the world in. Look at him. This guy is behaving like a parasite. He takes subsidies from you using electricity, and he lives off those parasitic subsidies, and then those subsidies drive up the cost of electricity, which drive off manufacturing to overseas and make it harder for the people of Australia and families of Australian small businesses. That's just like a parasite. It kills the host. It's feeding off the host, and it's killing the host. So now think about this. Not only does he not meet his targets, his company's targets, not only does he have a private jet, but he owns now and supports and sponsors is the word I'm looking for, a Formula One team. And he says, and the journalists have held him accountable for that. Very, very slow to do so. But the journalists have held him accountable for that. And he said, oh, yeah, we'll just wave that off with carbon credits. People don't realize that Formula One cars, they're not the main carbon dioxide producers. And by the way, carbon dioxide, there's nothing wrong with it. It's essential for all plants. It's essential for all life on this planet. And it's a trace atmospheric gas, around 0.04% of the Earth's atmosphere. The Formula One teams are moved around the planet. In the case, a couple of weeks ago, they were in Austin, Texas. They went down to Brazil, then they're going back up to Las Vegas in the United States. Then they move on to a couple of other countries, and that's the end of the season. I think it's 24 races per year. They fly all over Europe, and they wheel these cars and their garages and their research people into jets and fly them all over the world, almost every week, to and from a meeting, all over Europe, Australia, Russia. This is absolutely insane that this man can say that they're having little effect. Speaking of climate hypocrisy, there was an article in the Australian about the ultra woke green energy Atlassian's climate targets. Their sustainability report for 2025 shows that once again, a company that likes to trade on climate virtue did not live by its own rules. And it's taking subsidies from you while pretending dishonestly to meet targets. Their performance on these climate targets was so bad, it left market experts asking what's the point of their climate goals. What's the point? Theater? Marketing? Investment halo? Investment bait? This is all virtue signaling, and it's dishonest, it's lies. Other greenwashing billionaires have done exactly the same thing, announcing carbon emissions targets for getting headlines and then cruelly setting them aside, just pushing them aside. And you're paying for this. It's like these endless mythical green hydrogen projects, all parasitic. We give them hundreds of millions of dollars, in some cases billions of dollars, and we have a climate clown in Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese, another climate clown, have no idea of what they're doing. There is no plan. I'll go into that in more detail in future sessions. In the private sector, Atlassian is wasting its own money, but Albanese and Bowen are wasting your money, our money, doing the same thing with phantom climate targets. It's all stuff that comes out of the south end of a northbound bull. And so while the head of Atlassian flies around in a private jet lecturing you about green energy, your tax dollars are falling into this huge chasm beneath Canberra where the Treasury used to sit. It's just disgraceful. It's a scam. Moving on to UK citizens. Is there a video here going to play? No video? Okay, I thought there was. Anyway, it's a brief story. One of my staff has put this up. 2 people from the UK relocate to Australia and set up a new life for themselves. Due to the company closing, their employer in Australia closing, visa issues, they have to return to the UK. So here's the quote from the lady, I think. Quote, "Never in my life did I think I would post this, but here it is. I'm leaving Australia, my chosen home, the place that shaped me, the place I thought I could grow old in. It still feels urgent. It still feels unreal, I'm sorry. But sometimes life turns around and has different plans for us. What happened, my partner and I were on a sponsor visa and about to get their permanent residency in March 2026. A few months ago, we got the news that the company was sold. At the same time, his occupation was removed from the visa list, which meant there was no real way for us to apply for another visa. There are other options to get permanent residency, but after 4 years of working hard and spending a lot of money, we both didn't feel ready to sort another process. I'm having difficulty reading. So we decided to take it as a sign and leave Australia. But the closer the day comes, the sadder I feel to leave my home, my apartment, my people, and the life I built here. For some, it's just a country, but for me, this is bringing tears to me. For some, it's just a country, but for me, it's the life I created that I now have to say goodbye to. And honestly, it's breaking my heart. Workers contributing to Australia, yet forced to leave. Meanwhile, the same government is welcoming non-speakers of our language and putting them in welfare and in houses. How can that be? This is mass migration. This is unfair migration. This is unfair deporting. We have got 100,000 people who are here illegally and nothing is happening. And 2 workers are being shipped overseas. Speaking of the government, I'm going to read some notes from another one of my staffers. I've got some really decent staff, I tell you. Fantastic team. Including Ryan, who's just moved the screen. This is an upcoming omnibus bill. Next week, the government will be bringing on the regulatory reform omnibus bill, which means many bills in one. These bills are used to clean up mistakes in other bills and update regulation for unexpected consequences. In other words, the government has made a mess of things. The bill is huge because the government is so big. There are lots of mistakes and unintended and unexpected consequences of all their messy legislation. So I'll keep going with the notes. The first part of the bill is not routine. It introduces the concept that if you share information with one government department, they can share your data with all the other government departments without your knowledge. Oh, how helpful is that? Can you scroll up? Yeah. One example they give is this. If you update your bank account with Centrelink, they will automatically change your bank account everywhere for department, Medicare, tax department, Medicare, etc. So what happens if you have different bank accounts for different departments, different uses? The Robodebt scandal showed that one department is incapable of sharing data with another accurately. Since then, the federal government has spent $2 billion trying to get computer systems lined up to share data, and the completion date for that program is now 2028. Thanks, mate. This will be a disaster. You will have your data changed without your knowledge, without your permission. It may even be someone else's data to I can't read that word there. To obtain the government can change your data without telling you is diabolical. The idea that the government can change your data without telling you is diabolical. It's overreach. One Nation will oppose this measure. I mean, honestly, so many corrections to Labor bills, they're hastily drafted, just shoved out there. Sometimes it looks like they've got nothing better to do, and they just rush the next piece of legislation out. Then they have a record guillotine of 28 bills in one day. Guillotine means no debate, nothing. That's it. They just passed. Hasty, lack of thought, guillotines, no chance for. Sometimes they bypass the committee stage, the inquiry stage. Bloody hopeless. But let's get on to some good news. We're nearing the deadline for finishing. Branch startups with One Nation. We're almost halfway to the target of 151. Almost halfway. The goal is to have all 151 branches, one in each federal electorate, by the mid-2026, and we're well on target. Listen to this one. One Nation membership has grown 190%. I think that's since the election. But it's over a relatively short period. I know that is a very impressive figure. And now it's a shave, under being tripled, under triple what it was. Some polls are showing that nearly 1 in 5 people will be voting One Nation if an election was held today. And Young Nation is growing, and that's for 18 to 35-year-olds. Young people are getting interested in politics because they know that if they're not interested in politics, politics takes an unruly interest in them. We've got inquiries now from young people in the regions wanting to join, wanting to know more about it. To contact Young Nation, if you're 18 to 35 and interested or want to learn about politics, here's the email: national@youngnation.org.au. national@youngnation.org.au. And One Nation social media is having enormous successes. we're getting far greater reach and far greater interaction than other parties. What else have we got there? Have we got any Q&A? We've just put a new screen on here. Want to shoot me some questions, please?
From Ian Hackwell. Can't believe this. Destroying the environment for no benefit to the world emissions is global warming.
That's correct. Something I pointed out a long time ago. There are many, many ways, Ian, they're destroying the environment. The most obvious, of course, is clubbing koalas to death to bulldoze trees so they can install wind turbines. But the scale of the devastation is enormous because solar and wind have such very, very low energy density. You need a lot of installation, many, many turbines, all connected by a wide road that has to be so wide and flat. So they just carve off tops of mountains in North Queensland, just carving them off. And just so that they can move these wind turbine blades into place. So you can imagine that they've got to build basically flat roads up and down mountains, and just that means removing the tops of mountains. So, and solar panels, very low energy density, so they need to cover tens of square kilometers in glass and steel. That's it. And they lead carcinogens. So not only that, they have to take them so far away from the major cities, and then they have to have a huge area, then have to connect them all. So you have so many, I think it's 28,000 kilometers of transmission lines, not needed if we just replace them with coal-fired power stations, not needed at all. So you've got the transmission lines, you've got the solar panels, you've got the wind turbines, and the devastation is frightening. And the direct effect on biodiversity is just, it's terrifying.
Johnny D, when talking about the e-safety commissar,
Mm-hmm.
can they take her back?
Can people participating in this live stream hear you, Ryan?
I believe so. Unless they tell me I can't. They can't.
Can you tell us if you can hear Ryan asking the questions? But basically, what Johnny D said was that regarding the e-safety commissar, can the Americans take her back? You can. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I can't see the screens. In the early days, I could see the screen. I could see the comments, which was handy, but I can't see them now. Next question, Ryan.
From Sandy Nichols. Labour and Greens plus the Libs are all complicit in the climate scam.
Correct, Sandy. Absolutely correct. We don't have a lot of time left, and I will get into this in the future. The climate scam was started by Maurice Strong. He was a Canadian multi-millionaire, an oil baron. Yes, an oil baron. He created a scam around environmental destruction first, not climate, environmental destruction. He formed that nonsense led to the United Nations Environmental Program. That's a department within the United Nations. And guess who was appointed head of it? One of the senior bureaucrats of the United Nations, Maurice Strong. So he wielded enormous power because the UN was run basically by hacked bureaucratic hacks, by retired politicians, people who just didn't give a damn, notoriously ineffective. And along came Maurice Strong and beat up the environment. And there were some genuine environmental issues, but they haven't done anything about it, the UN. Been notoriously ineffective. Anyway, beat up the United Nations Environmental Program into a really strong department within the United Nations. And because he was the only one they thought knew about this, whatever he said got the go-ahead. One of the things that he did with the United Nations Environmental Program, they put out a rubbish scam about the disadvantages of DDT and the threat of DDT. It was based on complete nonsense. The United States Environmental Protection Agency actually did a scientific research into the DDT pesticide, which was used to kill mosquitoes carrying malaria, which killed people. And they said there is no scientific evidence that DDT, when used properly, is detrimental to the environment. and it was saving millions of lives by stopping mosquitoes spreading spreading malaria. So around 76, it was formed in 72. 6 months later, Maurice Strong was appointed its head. Around 76, DDT was banned thanks to the United Nations. The World Health Organization, of all the criminal, corrupt, incompetent, dishonest entities, the World Health Organization begged and pleaded for the United Nations to reinstate the use of DDT to kill malaria. And the ban was lifted. They estimate that in the intervening 30 years, 40 to 50 million people died needlessly from DDT that could have been avoided. So Maurice Strong is up there with Stalin and Mao Zedong as one of the top 3 mass killers in the world. But get this, he made his money in oil. And he said he had 2 aims in life. One was to deindustrialize Western civilization. What kind of human does that? That's the founder of the climate scam, Maurice Strong. The second aim he had for his life was to put in place an unelected socialist global governance. Now do you see why it's been created? You don't have to have elections to be in governance. You just have to have the means to do it. And this is what he did. So just one quote from Maurice Strong to show you the kind of man he is, or was. He died in 2015, just before the Paris Agreement was signed, the non-agreement. Maurice Strong said, quote, "The enemy is humanity itself. And as a result of that and the Club of Rome's lies, the world has been engaged in telling its children for 3 generations now that humans are evil, greedy, uncaring, rapacious. They've been spreading guilt and fear." Now, Maurice Strong developed the whole package of the UN Agenda 21, which morphed into UN Agenda 2030, a system of global governance. By controlling what national governments do, they can govern the world. 17 sustainable development goals. Many of them are only sustainable with subsidies, which means they're not sustainable. But they're put in place to control every aspect of human life, food, energy, transport, communication. 17 of them. Check them out. Google it. Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations, 17 of them. They formed a partnership with the World Economic Forum in 2018. They're both in on it. And their objective is to control people, force them to do things, and then to transfer wealth from the people to the globalist predators, the parasitic globalist predators. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State, etc., the global wealth funds. And listen to this. This is fact as well. Maurice Strong was one of the co-founders and a director of the Chicago Climate Exchange, set up to trade carbon dioxide credits. Now do you see what it's all about? Al Gore is connected with them. Goldman Sachs is connected with them. Maurice Strong, on a separate issue, was wanted by American law enforcement officers for fraudulent activities. I think it had something to do with water trading in the western United States, maybe Colorado. So he left the country and exiled himself in China. Who's the major beneficiary of this scam? China. Solar panels, wind turbines. Yet they produce 4.7 billion tons of coal, nearly 5 billion tons of coal. We produce 460, 500 million tons of coal. 1/10, 1/9. China burns more than 54% of the coal consumed in the world. It's got nothing to do with climate. It's got nothing to do with the environment. It's got nothing to do with stopping people burning coal. It's got everything to do with carbon dioxide credits. Goldman Sachs, major bankers, major billionaires want to make money out of it. That was a personal objective of Maurice Strong. That's abundantly clear. But another objective of Maurice Strong was to free the United Nations from being dependent on member country donations and to set up its own revenue, carbon dioxide credits, carbon dioxide taxation, trading of carbon dioxide credits. That was to give him money, fellow investors money, and to give the United Nations funds to make it independent so it had its own revenue. Well, I'll leave you with that. And I think, well, yeah, I'll leave you with that. So I can't say have a good weekend, but I just remember, I am fiercely pro-human. I hope you are too. Have a good evening, and we've got the Senate in session next week. I can't do a live stream on Friday either next week. And then we've got Senate estimates for a week, and I'll be in Senate estimates that following Friday. We'll have to do another one outside of Friday, another weekday. Okay, that's the weekly wrap-up from the only opposition party, the Sensible Party, the only party listening to and serving the Australian people and already creating waves that other parties are now following. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you very much.